Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Kissing. How weird is it that we just mash our faces together instead of using our words? Let's dim the lights and get frisky.
Ooh, hey. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Vandalay Industries, the #1 importer-exporter in the world. Vandalay Industries. Welcome to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I'm Todd.
And this is the show where we do a podcast every week, if you didn't know, about movies. And we like to break and analyze them and see why they work, if they work, how they maybe could have worked better, or why they're brilliant in the first place, which is usually the tact we go towards, is finding the things that work for us. And sometimes, things don't work, and that's always very illuminative. As artists, I think we're always thinking about how to get better, how to refine our skill sets. And every week, man, I go through this same process. It wasn't as bad this week, or in some ways it was worse, that I get nervous before I do anything like creative. In this show, despite what it may look like, is a creative endeavor, to some limited degree, even though it's heavily focused on analysis and just kind of pop culture opinion. But I still get nervous because every time I'm going to create something, I feel underprepared. And so it's not until I have everything, all my ducks in a row, I have my notes, I know exactly what I want to do and how I'm going to do it. Now, for this show, because it usually runs about an hour, there's a limit to that. Like, I have a general outline of things I want to hit on, but we have a nice organized playlist, so to speak, of the show programming and what we're going to talk about first and second. Except like this sound, what we're talking about right now is not a part of the thing. We could easily add it in, I guess, but I never feel, if I'm going into a film or if I'm going into a performance, I never feel I feel jittery, I feel nervous until I've gone through it about 1,000 times, either in my head or on paper. I have some kind of way to organize my thoughts. And then I kind of get this sigh of relief, like, okay, I can fully visualize exactly what's about to happen, and I no longer feel like a madman or a fraud or a fake that's about to completely fall on his face in front of everybody. And so I wonder about you, though, in the sense of, you for years ran your own band, and I know what it's like as a filmmaker walking onto a set with my shot list and my script and how I'm going to get everybody on the same page. You were the front man for, I don't know, give or take 5 or 10 years. And you would go on tours, you would do shows. What was that process? Was there anxiety beforehand? What was your experience getting ready for shows?
Yeah, I was nervous still. Like, even playing guitar around my wife, I get nervous. I'm always nervous. Always.
Are you kidding?
No, not kidding. I don't know why. When I was like really quiet and reserved as a kid, so when I started playing music, everybody was really surprised. It was like it was very weird for them to see me in that position. And it was weird for me too. I think I just did it because it was scary and it just felt good to like be scared. But I always thought maybe the next show it'll kind of go away, or I'll be a little bit more comfortable, and I never have gotten comfortable with it. It's always, I think that after the first song, you know what the night's going to be like, right? Unless you have 1,000 screaming fans at the moment you walk out, which I've had that before. You don't really know how the night's going to go until after the response of the opening song. And so you're always nervous that you're just going to get it wrong off the bat, like right at the very beginning, right? It's one thing if you kill it for half of whatever you're doing, whether it's acting or directing, you're killing it, and then you make a mistake. Well, yeah, but you've been killing it half the time, right? Everybody makes mistakes. It's another thing if you shit the bed the very beginning, and that's the time where you're most nervous, is at the very beginning.
So what does that look like for you? Like if you step on stage and you drop the ball, what does that practically look like from my perspective and your perspective as an audience member?
Well, from your perspective as an audience member, you might feel a little. The worst thing that you could feel, to me, is nervous for me, right?
Yeah.
If it's an entertaining thing, then that's okay. If it's like there was the other day, I saw it again on YouTube. Stevie Ray Vaughan used to be a huge idol of mine. He was playing Austin City Limits, and he breaks a string. You've probably seen this. He breaks a string in the middle of playing, right? And he keeps playing on until there's a break, right? And he's still singing. But as he's singing, he starts taking his guitar off calmly, hands it to the tech. The tech hands him another guitar. And the moment he hands it to him, Stevie plugs it in and starts playing without the strap on. He's just holding it tight and playing while his tech is hooking the strap onto the guitar. That, like, you can't, that's entertaining, right? I'm not nervous for Stevie Ray Vaughan. The guy is just incredible. That's entertainment. Stuff goes wrong, right? So a good example would be like at the beginning of a show, my amp blowing, which has happened before, or a cable going bad, which is literally the worst thing that could happen because you have cables everywhere and you don't know which one it is. So you're just unplugging shit left and right. Like, oh, is it a patch cable on my pedal board? Is it my cable to the board, to the amp? Like, what is happening? And you have to figure it out on the fly. And luckily that's happened enough to where I know, just straight into the amp, boom, and then, but that stuff goes wrong. And when it goes wrong at the beginning of the night, you're like, oh gosh, okay, I got an uphill battle all the way now, And then I was always nervous about my voice. Like, there's so many rock singers who can just perform and they're just amazing, right? All the time. And I was never like that. I was always like, I cannot drink before a show because the first thing that goes is my voice. I can't. And I learned that the hard way a lot. So I had to be very protective. Like the night before, I had to get some sleep. Like it was very stressful. So yeah, I was always nervous. But I think I put that on myself. One, because I always hold myself to like a really high standard, which is good. But then also like I would write music and tracks that would take my voice to the literal limit, and all the time, And it was just because I liked singing that register, but it wasn't because it was easy. It was really hard, and so it was like, oh, here comes that high B. Am I gonna hit that? I don't know. Nope. Didn't hit that tonight.
Really? There would be times when you miss it.
Oh, dude. Yeah. All the time. Oh yeah. But that's the thing. Like you gotta, like, I think everybody notices, right? But I think it's, as long as you perform the shit out of it, then it's kind of accepted. It's like it's like the where did the T-Rex come from in Jurassic Park? What was it?
Camera left, yeah.
The camera left, yeah. Like, you just kind of ignore the little faux pas that happens, right? Yeah. Maybe sometimes if you make the rest of the show that good.
Yeah, if you're emotionally
so anyway, to answer your question,
invested,
long.
Yeah. That's
So I always still to this day I'm nervous. So.
Huh. Well.
Yeah. So you're not alone. You're not alone.
Apparently,
and I think that all of us have some kind of like what is it? What's the term now? It's like
imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Imposter syndrome. All of us. And if you say that you don't, tell me how, because or you're a little too pompous, maybe. Like maybe take a look at yourself, because there's 100,000 people that are probably better at you in whatever you think that you're the best at.
Totally. So. No, like I've started finally watching The Last Dance that you recommended, and I'm on episode 3 right now, and there's this clip, and it's a historically famous clip of Jordan dunking on someone. He's got his tongue out, and while he's doing it, that's like showboaty stuff. But what really I started thinking about that, of this guy is dunking over somebody with his tongue out. That's a very conscious decision. That's not something that, generally happens by accident. And there's a number of places that you have to get to that place. And it's such a level of comfort, because on the one hand, you might look at it and say, you should be focused. And I don't think there's a human alive that's going to sit here and say Michael Jordan wasn't the most focused, basketball player on the court, if he was logged in. It's game time, 110%. And so if you spend enough time in that space of, there's this phrase where, as an athlete, you might say, man, did you see that guy in the fourth quarter? He was unconscious. That means you're not in your head, right? You're just so in the zone. You're so focused, that things are just kind of happening and with this high level of intensity. And I think if you spend enough time in that space, with that level of intensity, you become comfortable with it enough that you become aware of what you're doing. You're not unconscious anymore. You're in the zone and loose at the same time. And I feel like that's where he got to. He got to this place where he was so focused and so comfortable being that level of focus that he could do silly things on the fly, like windmilling and 360 dunks in the game. Whereas I love basketball and I played growing up. I never got to that point. I was always so 110% that I never blinked until I, checked out of the game. And whenever you get to that point, I don't know if I'll ever get to this point. I feel like I'm going to forever be in the imposter syndrome until, like you said, once you have a few good days or a few good sets, then it's just like, okay, the first half of my set's been going well. I can kind of, enjoy a mistake and it's not going to throw my game off, as opposed to coming right out of the gate. That mistake happens and maybe imposter syndrome or anxiety takes over, and you have the audience, on their heels in a bad way. Because like you said, that was such a beautiful point that you made. You don't want the audience feeling anxiety for you. Like you want them to feel loose and relaxed. And if they feel tense, then no one's going to have a good time. Because now they're parenting you.
yeah, exactly. And like they're not coming to see me to feel bad for me. They're trying to they had bad things that happened during the day and they want to let loose. But I think the biggest thing is the ability to embrace your mistakes, meaning like to forget about them quickly, right? And I'm not even just talking about me in general, because you bring up Michael Jordan, like the amazing thing. Okay, if I'm performing or if you're on set, I think the moment we know that we know more than everybody there is the moment that we calm down, right? And so if you think about that, then that's really dependent upon what everybody else knows. Then your comfort level is dependent upon what everybody else knows. And that's never a good thing. It's never a good thing to have, right? So when I would realize that, and still now, like when I realize that, I say, okay, well, I'm just going to act like I know more than everyone else. I'm not going to say it, right? I'm just going to work like I know what I'm doing more than you do. Because when I do that, I do it from a relaxed point of view where I don't care what you think because you don't know what I know, right? And in a way, that's true. In a way, there's always something that I'm going to know that you're not going to know. It might be right or wrong, whatever. It's not the point, but it helps me calm down in whatever it is I'm doing, whether that's music or film or whatever,
Totally.
or this, like there are 100,000 other people more qualified to be on this podcast with you than me. 100,000 other people.
Ditto.
But nobody has my outlook on things the way that I have it, right? So I am bringing something to this. And so that makes me calm down and I'm chill. You know what I mean? So it's just, I would have to remind myself of that when I would think about it. I wouldn't always think about it before a show because my head was just like all over the place, but when I did think about it, it did help me calm down a whole lot and it helped me perform better because it gave me confidence in myself. And I think that that's probably what Jordan had and has, is just like, yeah, I might have a bad night, but I'm going to be better tomorrow night. What? So what? You know, like, it just doesn't care. Just embraces the fact you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to screw up, whatever. And then, you know, he'd come back and demolish you the next night, you know? And obviously you have to have some kind of skill to be able to do that, especially at will like he did. But yeah, good question. Led us down a rabbit hole there.
Yeah, awesome. Speaking of,
we talk about movies on this podcast,
yeah,
right?
Speaking of the 97 Bulls, what 1997 movie are we going to be doing today? Ooh, segue.
Ooh, look at that. Is that why you picked this?
Seamless. No, completely not.
No? Well, should have been.
Happy coincidence.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Love Jones today, and all the good things that come along with it. What do you got?
So yeah, we're going to talk about a few things, some of the acting and adding subtext through performances, story and writing, how a romance creates tension, and why sex scenes are great storytelling tools, and other such stuff and things and stuff. And did you notice
make sure
there was no cinematography on the list?
I noticed. We're going to get to that, though. I'll get to that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen Love Jones, pause this episode, go watch it. There's going to be spoilers. We're going to be talking about all the good little diddlies in it. 3, 2, 1, here we go. And if you hear kids in the background laughing, it's because they're still awake and it's 10 o'clock and we're doing this from home. What are you going to do? Synopsis of the film. Darius, a writer, and Nina, a photographer, discover the complications of turning a casual relationship into something more in 1997 Chicago. Written and directed by Theodore Witcher. Cinematography by Ernest Holzman. Starring Nia Long as Nina Mosley, Larenz Tate as Darius Lovehall, Isaiah Washington as Savon, Bill Bellamy as Hollywood, Lisa Nicole Carson as Josie, and Bernadette Speaks as Sheila.
What? But I work with her.
I work with her. Okay.
Darius, she isn't my girlfriend or anything. I work with her.
All right.
What?
Come on, man, you know, but I mean, you married.
What are you, the fucking moral majority now?
No, I'm just saying.
Stop.
I mean, Troy's a good woman.
Wait, if my memory serves me correctly, you were the one that told me not to get married. In fact, all of y'all told me not to get married.
Who? I said
Yeah,
that.
you.
I
Don't
didn't
be saying who you.
Damn, I did say that. But I also said the Commodores would get back together. I mean, who knew, man?
Look, man, let me tell you something. People grow apart, all right? People change. But see, you wouldn't know anything about that.
What you talking about?
No, you wouldn't know anything
Yes, I
about
would.
that. No, you wouldn't, Darius, because the last relationship you've been in that lasted longer than 6 months, my brother was never.
Are you kidding? Felicia. Felicia, yes, Felicia.
All right, Felicia. So, I maintain. When you get your wife, you advise me on mine. I'm saying it's just it. All y'all running around here jumping and hopping, skipping, diving, falling in love and shit. Falling in love ain't shit. Somebody talk to me, please, about how to stay there. Do I love my wife? Hell yes. Is she here? Hell no.
All right, man.
All right? As far as I'm concerned, all of y'all can step.
I think you need a hug, Savon.
Nice. So, of the two of us, I'm pretty sure you have not seen this before. This is your first.
No,
I
I've
feel
not seen this
pretty
before.
confident on that.
Yeah.
So I am like very curious because for me, I saw this not when it came out, but a couple years. Like I think I saw it in '99. So it was like 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years after it came out, before I, came across it. And so for me, there's a high probable nostalgia factor that comes with it, as opposed to someone like you watching it for the first time 23 years, after it was made. I don't know if it holds up, to a new audience member or not. So I am really curious, like if this was something that, you enjoyed, or if it was a mixed bag or whatnot. So how did it go for you?
Okay. Well, man, It is a mixed bag for me. I feel like, so let me start with the good about it. The good was, I felt like the cinematography was really good because I didn't notice it. Right?
Yeah.
And in 1997, I would know, like,
there's a lot that
show
can
me
go
another movie in
wrong.
1997 where it didn't, like, that movie looked like it was like it could have been shot now.
Yeah.
Really. Like, if you made this movie now, you would want it to be shot like that. Like, there were, I think maybe some of the editing could have been a little bit better, but I can't even tell you why. But I feel like the cinematography was really great for a story like that. There were a lot of close-ups when there needed to be close-ups. There were a lot of mediums when, when it was poignant, and not a ton of wides, but when they were pointed. Like, I felt like out of most of the any old movies that we've covered here, I feel like this cinematography wise was one of the best because I didn't really notice it. I was just in the story, and that was good. That was good. So, and that was something that I noticed, and I was like, man, I want to call this out, that I'm expecting this to look like trash because it's 1997, and it doesn't. In fact, it looks really, really good. I feel like it's it doesn't. I don't know if it was shot on film or not, but it doesn't look like super grainy and like dirty old, dirty for the sake of looking like film. I don't know. It looked very high quality. I thought the angles were really great. It was good. I thought the acting was really good too, on a lot of fronts. I mean, some more than others, but on Darius, I thought was really good. I thought Nina was okay. There were moments, right? But I've just never been a huge fan of her. So I just, she was okay. But Darius, I thought was really, really good. Isaiah Washington was the best part of the movie.
He's amazing. Yeah.
That clip
Yeah.
is the best part of the movie. Thank you for playing that clip. That's the best part of the movie because it was the most real. If we get down to brass tacks, I thought the rest of it was not good. I didn't like his character at the beginning, and I know normally in a show like this you're not supposed to, but it was like he usually in a story like this, you have the main character guy who's like this player, right? Who then just like, I don't know, like learns something and in a way where he has to lose something. And I guess he kind of does because it takes a year for them to get back together at the end, but not really. He doesn't ever really lose anything for me. And then the pursuing her, the way he pursued her like that was very aggressive, scary, creepy, aggressive. And yet it works, and she like lets him in to the apartment. And then this is not me being 2020 Todd, where everybody's woke, right? This is me just like, at any point seeing a movie like this, I'd be like, really? You like get her address from a check she writes somebody else, and then she lets you in, and then you take her out, and then she sleeps with you on a first date? Like, that is, I mean, I don't know. It didn't feel like you really had to work for it, and I guess they made it seem like maybe he did, but to me, he didn't. And I could go through a list of a bunch of other stuff, but just start there, that I just did not like the story and the way that it played out. And then making Isaiah Washington's character just like so small. I felt like I wanted to see more of him. I wanted more of him in there. I wanted him to like actually teach Darius something. He doesn't really, like, his character is the character that's like the father character. He's been married for a long time. He and his wife have their issues, and Darius tries to tell him something or whatever, and he's like, no, whatever. Let me tell you how it is. Like that clip is, right? But then he's like, you need a hug, and then they laugh, and it's over. And it's almost like Darius just blows that off. Like, it doesn't even matter. And then and then they just move on. And then we never really even see him again. Maybe one other time. But then, oh yeah, we do see him one other time. Well, was that before or after in the at dinner in the bar where he makes a joke that he's falling in love with her?
Yeah, no, at the bar when they're just grabbing some beers and discussing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I would have liked to see him more, and I would have liked for him to teach Darius something, but I don't feel like Darius really learned anything. At least, well, I guess he kind of did at the end, but only not from Isaiah Washington's character, from Savon, I guess is his name. So I don't know. Wasn't my favorite, and it's not because of the age or anything like that. It's just, there's 1980 movies that I really enjoy, that I really like, and I could watch again. This one just was difficult to get through, and it was long. It was really long.
Yeah,
it's almost 2 hours.
It's like an hour 40. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that it? Are you sure?
No, maybe not. So 40 plus 10. Hour 50, sorry.
Yeah. Anyway. So I'll pause there so I can hear your take.
Nice. No, I mean, I love it.
As someone who's seen this before.
Yeah, as someone who's seen it like 1,000 times. Like, no, I love it. This is my favorite romance movie probably ever. One of the things I really like about it is what it's not trying to be. It's not trying to be a comedy. And it's a more complex story than most romance movies go after. Like, normally I feel like the setups and payoffs are telegraphed, right? It is, oh, here's a bad boy who needs to learn, how to love, or how to whatever, be good to people, or whatever, not be creepy. Like, those are storylines in other, romance movies, by the way. I'm not just saying stuff to say it. But here I feel like we're kind of dropped into Chicago, where we just get to see people's lives and very regular people. Like, Chicago is a very artistic town. And so it doesn't bother me at all, right, that he's a writer and she's a photographer, and they're both working. It's not like they're successful. She gets a taste of success, and he gets a book published, and who knows where that goes from there. That's a finicky game anyway. Both of them are. So I love the general setting, and that we're never really spoon fed who these people are. We have to kind of evolve our idea of them as the story progresses, and as we see them make decisions. Because at the beginning, right, Darius is looking like the smoothest dude on the block, and he's talking to this girl at the bar, and whatever, he knocks her drink over, and he recovers nicely though, right? He goes on stage, does a poem, and like kills it. And now from there, we see him lose the upper hand with the game of attraction that we're clearly starting to play, and we see him go too far, right? We see him again in they see each other in the record store, and he lays some lines down, and still not working, and he goes too far. Like, he gets her address and phone number off her check, and that's a hurdle. Like, that's a very clear hurdle that he has to go through with her at the door. Even like, we sit there he walks up, right, and she sees him, and we see her very strongly react to that visually, and it's all subtextual. Like, I love her performance a lot. By contrast, I think she is incredible in this film, because she is constantly communicating without words. Like, she is constantly telling us exactly how she's feeling. And I think that door example is a really good one of why I am able to buy into him getting in there and him smoothing that out, is because of the way she allows kind of an emotional undertow, which gives us tension, her reaction, that initial response of like, you did what? What are you doing here? Like, this is creepy. And that's constantly in play on her face. And we also see her relent, and there's some resolution from that tension through her visual cues and how she's responding, and him trying to warm up and acknowledge, like, yeah, I get that this isn't normal, but blah, blah, blah. Because up until that point, they had a kind of a chemistry going. We could see that, you know, she was interested, but she just didn't feel like the timing was right. And his persistence, well, definitely, I agree, creepy, not something that we would advise anyone do. Although I've had that happen to me a number of times, to be honest, where
What?
girls looking me up and like lifting my name and information off of like receipts and sign in at the gym, that kind of stuff.
It's different.
It is, the dynamic
But
is
congratulations.
completely different. Thanks. Yeah. That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm congratulating you for that instead of saying, "Oh my God, you're still alive?
Or, do you need a cop?
How'd you get out of there?"
Yeah. And so we see her creeped out and irritated, but we also see her relax and, you know, kind of get won over. And that is a hurdle that, you know, they walk through, and they don't do it super, super quickly. But I feel like they give it enough time that it becomes a winning thing instead of a creepy thing. And it's not the first. Like, I've seen this kind of moment play out in other films. I mean, you can go back to Rocky. Like, there's some super creepy stuff that happens in that first Rocky that he has to win us over through. And yeah, go watch that shit and tell me it's not creepy. But we still love it. We're still rooting for him at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I think throughout this entire movie, and, you know, screw it, I'll just kind of keep running through my notes here. The other visual storytelling that I kind of logged that under the performance stuff under visual storytelling, is like during his performance, we're also watching Nina get sucked into his performance. We're already starting to buy their connection just based on how she's kind of entranced. And we really get that feeling strongly whenever we start watching Josie watching Nina. Like, she's sitting there watching her and Nina's not looking back, right? She is totally entranced. And so just, you know, letting us see how deeply into this performance she is, kind of starts pulling us into the attraction and what's happening and how he's having a winning moment right now. And that's such a good performance by him on stage. And it's, and you're right. I mean, he is incredible in this film too. Like, he's very magnetic and natural, and all of his plays work well. At the end of the day, I am an Isaiah Washington fan. Like, I think that guy is just so easy to watch, and I wish he had, you know, more roles and better roles. And I know there's
Totally agree.
some reasons for that, but
What?
I don't know. I know he got fired, and I don't know all the details. And it's one of those things that, without knowing more details, I'm a very gray area human being, and so I don't know what all happened. But effectively, I know he was let go from Grey's Anatomy based on some back and forth, because he was my favorite thing on Grey's Anatomy, and one of the reasons I stopped watching the show was he used the F word for the slur for gays with one of his coworkers who was gay, and so I know that created tension. And ultimately I believe that was a big moment for him being let go. And I don't know if his career has, you know, suffered long term for that, or if he's recovered nicely. I don't know. I'm always rooting for people to, you know, get second chances and come back. And so if I ever had the chance to work with Isaiah Washington, you're damn sure I would do it. Anyway, moving into like story and writing, the opening thesis is pretty strongly set up, right? We have Nina, who's saying like, love is played out. Like, I'm not doing that shit anymore. You know, she's moving out after going through a really strange, you know, engagement process that gets broken off when it sounds like her fiance just kind of disappeared. And she's like, I don't know where this dude is. He just dropped me. Which I've seen that kind of stuff happen. I've seen worse happen. I've seen people who are married get ghosted. Yeah. So this whole scenario doesn't feel outlandish to me at all. From a personal, you know, experience perspective, I guess. And then we see Darius's thesis whenever he talks about romance being gone and how, you know, people in relationships say the romance is gone. He's like, no, what they're really saying is that they've exhausted the possibilities. And so what I like about that opening clip that we played with Savon and talking to Darius saying, fall in love, you know, doing all that, it's nothing. Like, talk to me about how to stay there. And it comes back to that question of, is it about the possibilities being exhausted, or is there another way to look at love? Is there another way to think about it? And I think the end resolution of that is love is something that you can't live without. That's kind of what defines love, I think. It's not just about the possibilities. It's about not being able to be without someone, which is why he gets back. I think Savon gets back together with his wife. That's just someone he can't live without, and she can't live without him. And ultimately, that's what Nia and Darius come to realize, in very, small ways. Like, I don't think it's super obvious in the resolution, but we'll get to that in a second, maybe, if I don't lose track. But I love that they're not telegraphing all the setups and payoffs. Like, at the beginning, after he does his poem and they're sitting outside, and Nina walks up to him and he's like, well, yeah, maybe next week you can do a poem for me. And she's like, there are other topics. He's like what? And she walks up to him, grabs a pen, and starts writing on his palm. We don't know what she's about to write. I think there's a light expectation that she's going to write a phone number, because that's kind of a meet cute thing that happens in classic stories of boy meets girl writes her number on palm, and instead she writes love, because his poem was all about sex. She's like, yeah, sex, there's nothing wrong with sex, but there's better things to talk about, and love is a better thing to talk about. So we can already see her relenting to her own, swearing off of love. Like, she's already kind of willing to think about it, even if she's not going to open up that door all the way, because she doesn't give her number. And then whenever he does ask her, she says no. Like, she is really committed to swearing off love. And it takes Darius coming and breaking through her door, metaphorically speaking, even though it looks almost, literal. It's metaphorical. He really has to pursue, and he really has to go after her to get her to open up back to that possibility. And I think that's where a lot of the tension comes through in this film. And again, we'll come back to that in a second. But they don't telegraph all their setups and payoffs. At the party where Savon has brought a friend, quote unquote, few minutes later, we're seeing him judge Wood for bringing Nina to the party, right? And he gets checked by Sheila because Wood is like, man, what is wrong with you? And Sheila looks at him like, don't you even? Because, 30 seconds ago, Sheila was dressing him down about bringing this girl to a party. And so there's this very light payoff to the idea of him going out on a limb, so to speak, and bringing a girl to a party. And it's very subtext, I don't know if I'd call it subtextual, but it's layered in there without being obvious. There's all kinds of dynamics that are happening beneath the surface. Even though they're kind of called out, they're not called out in a way that's hitting you over the head. They don't hit you over the head and say, yeah, remember Savon just brought someone to a party that he shouldn't have brought. How are you going to judge Wood for bringing someone to the party too? And there's layers. There's a lot of those layers that are happening in this film. If you're, looking for it, and if you're thinking about all the character dynamics that are happening in the stories, or in all the storyline plots. And what I really love about this is that it's a pure romance. It's not trying to be anything else. It's not trying to be a comedy, which is what a lot of romance films end up trying to be. Even my second favorite romance film is probably Notting Hill. That's trying to be a comedy too. And these films, I think, work best when they stick in the drama category of being a romance, because this sits right underneath the drama genre. And it lets the characters act out from their complexity instead of for a punchline. And now we have to interpret where their actions are coming from. We never, feel like we're working towards anything else other than just observing characters in their habitat. Like whenever they have their breakup, we're seeing Nina react pretty viscerally, and we don't, like, she's being an asshole. And Darius doesn't understand why. He's like, but he kind of triggers it. He's like, leave me alone, I'm writing. And she's like, whatever. And then he tries to get cute. And the rule of repeats kind of starts kicking in here, right? He picks up his camera and he's going to start taking cute photos of her like she did at his apartment. Take off your clothes. and she's not playing that game. It worked with him. It's not working with her. And he's like, don't you trust me? And that setup was set up, several acts before, not several acts, but several, scenes before. And because she was like, don't you trust me? And now he's using it in the same way, but she's turning that on its head by saying, no, I don't trust you, which kicks off this whole issue of who's calling you in the middle of the night, whose number do you have on your wall, blah, blah, blah. And so it's really well staged with being very patient in the setups and payoffs and keeping that in the pure romance category. And so in a romance, the stakes are different because you don't have these comedy bits to kind of rely on to kind of carry you through the film. And instead, it's all about your emotional investment. And if it's not going to work there, then the film just isn't going to work for you. And for me, it works. And generally speaking, a romance needs, characters to fall in love. And we fall in love with them falling in love together. Like that's where all the tension comes through, is by jeopardizing the relationship. The heartbreak that comes through the film comes through killing the relationship. And ultimately, the release or the joy, the catharsis comes when they get back together. And that's where most romance films end. It ends when they get back together, right? They fight through whatever. The job separated us, or the dad who didn't like me now likes me again, or you're rebelling against the dad, whatever it is. And those all work fine. I'm not saying those are bad, endings or bad resolutions. But what I really love about this film is that they do something that I don't know that I've seen any other film do, which is they get back together, in the second act. And now we watch them together, and then we watch them fall apart. And then the real resolution is that they get back together again, and they come to discover that there's something else that's missing. And I just really enjoy that aspect of this film, because normally it is very much a meet cute. Oh, they can't be together. They're going to work through it. Something happens and they break up, and then it's all about getting them back together. And here instead, we get to see an extra layer to that process of them together, actually together, and why it doesn't work, and seeing how that ultimately impacts the decision to get back together. That's very fun to me. Another rule for romance films, and this goes, I think, even extends into sitcoms and comedies. You want an attractive couple, right? These are two really good, and as good as Larenz Tate is a good-looking man, Nia Long to me is like my freaking idol of the 90s, man. She is gorgeous. And
just
so
the 90s?
Well, yeah, fair enough. Like,
Yeah, right.
To 2020, like she is killing the game. But you want an attractive couple, and it's important that nobody else we meet should be more attractive than they are. It's a difficult line to ride, and if they are, and that doesn't just extend to physicality. It also means in personality. So if we meet someone else who is at least as attractive as they are, their personality can't be on par. Like they can't be as good of a person. That's a really hard rule to break, and there are films that break it, but it takes a whole different level of stakes and investment and a different attitude. Whereas here, Marvin is a really good-looking dude, but he's also a jerk. Like we never like Marvin. And Wood, right, he's a jackass. He's competing for our love and for Nina's attention, but he's a jackass, and he's also too silly to ever feel any chemistry. And we never really get to know Lisa, which is, who's competing for Darius's affection. And so we never get a chance to fall in love with her. Like, oh, here's this other really attractive woman, but you're never going to get to know her because we can't risk the audience wanting different people to be in love than our two main characters. That's highly important. And that's normally conveyed in a physical sense, but here they opted more for a personality sense. Let's make sure we don't fall in love with anyone else's personalities and the way that they click together, which is great. And the other problem with the romance is, who's the villain? Like, who's going to be our bad guy? And normally that is going to be some kind of father figure, or, the best friend, or there's going to be some dynamic in there that rubs the situation wrong. Whether it's class, which usually comes down to, economics, or if it's going to be just acceptability. There's a lot of different dynamics. And here, we don't have any of that. Like, these are equals. They're in Chicago. They're both artists. And so who's the villain? Who's our bad guy? What's keeping them apart ultimately? And in this case, I think it's a number of things. I think it's pride, right? Pride prevents vulnerability in human beings. And in this movie, I feel like anytime someone is vulnerable, they're punished for it. Like, Nina tells him when her train is leaving, right? After they break up and he has this opportunity to set things right, he finds out when the train is leaving, and he doesn't show. And that's the first time whenever she's going to New York, he doesn't even try. He's trying to play it cool, right? That's the game. I think that's the other villain, is playing the game. She says, I'll call him tomorrow whenever I don't have to call him tonight. And of course, she waits too long. She sees him with another girl, and that adds a whole different wrinkle in the game. And then in the second act, whenever she leaves for good, Josie calls him up on the phone. Is like, hey, I just thought you should know she's about to leave for New York, and if you want to do anything about it, here's the train. And he waits and waits, and he's trying to play the game and act like he doesn't care. He waits too long, misses the train, and ultimately it costs him something that he obviously wanted, because you see him flying through the train station, and it's reckless. Like, he's on his bike, weaving in and out of traffic. Like, that's a completely reckless scenario that I think kind of visually communicates his level of desire in a simple and yet effective way. And I think that goes back to, this is a movie in 1997. There are things that happen in movies in 97 that we've covered recently that we don't appreciate as much anymore. Like running in the rain, that kind of stuff. Like, that doesn't play as well in 2020. But nostalgia points, I'm okay with it. Like, again, it comes back to, I'm used to this movie. And I think another villain in these kinds of films, romance films, is jealousy, insecurity. That's ultimately what's going to drive a wedge between, a relationship. Love can't really thrive when there's insecurity or jealousy. And that ultimately was what is the nail in the coffin in their first real committed go round. And ultimately, something that they have to give space and time to before they're able to kind of circle back and say, I don't care. I'm willing to deal with it, whatever may come. But I enjoy a lot of the conversations in this film specifically. I love that, there's a mixed reaction of honesty, because normally they're going to be more honest with their friends, but not each other. And even not until, things boil over. Like, they don't want, and this is, I feel like, such a truism in relationships, generally speaking, that people don't want to communicate until they've already had the last straw break the camel's back. No one wants to communicate ahead of time to get ahead of the situation. And I think that plays out perfectly in this film. Like, she doesn't say anything until, she's ready to snap. And he doesn't ever give her an opportunity until it's too late. And I feel like there's just so many great moments that plays out, even whenever he's walking her home after Wood abandons her at the party and she's trying to walk home. He walks out and he's like, let me just call a cab. And they literally wait until the cab pulls up before they start arguing. Like, they're just sitting there steaming, seething in silence until the cab pulls up. And it's like they need to wait until there's an exit before you really start going at it. And I feel like that happens all the time in medical films, or you kind of call that the doorknob moment, where the patient is waiting until they get to the doorknob before they actually tell you why they're there. And in this film, they wait until it's just a hair too late before they explode and let all the things kind of come to the surface in the worst way possible. But generally speaking, there's a lot of complex emotions that are happening that I really respect, because I think it's easy to kind of telegraph why someone's upset or, have these kind of easy moments. But here, there's a very human moment when she sees him. She's in the bookstore. She looks out the window and sees him walking down the street with some other girl. And I love that she is so upset and she's heartbroken because She literally just left New York after having been with her ex. And she has the audacity to be upset with him. And she knows this. But that's human nature. It's much more complex than just saying, yeah, logically speaking, yeah, I was just with someone. But I told you about him. And so I had a right to be with him because I was upfront and honest about it. You had no right to be with her because you were never upfront and honest with me. And she's not able to really get over it until they have that explosion right then and there. And eventually, you know, they're able to, you know, later on, not very long after that, kind of make amends and say, yeah, okay, it's fine now. Like, I think we just all need these cathartic moments whenever you've been having this, you know, battle in your head with whoever, you know, you're dating or a friendship, whatever it is. You kind of need to have those moments of, I just need to air it. And then I can get over it and I can move beyond it. And I feel like that's all kind of in there. It's laid in there without ever feeling telegraphed in, I don't know, untrue. I always feel like the moments in here are very honest. Even if the writing isn't and the dialogue isn't necessarily like perfect, the actors do such a great job with delivering it that it feels honest and it feels it plays really well right off the off their performance. With the rule of repeats, I mentioned the other one. The other one that I really loved in this was very subtle. Again, Darius does a poem at the beginning of the film about sex, and she approaches him outside and she suggests a poem about love, and that's where it ends. Like, he gets no progress after his poem. That gets him nowhere. Whereas at the end of the film, she does a poem and she's vulnerable. That's my favorite thing. I'll link y'all in at the end of the episode. I'll plug myself because why not? I haven't been plugging shorts lately. But I love how vulnerable she is on stage, and you know, it's very endearing, and for me it completely sells the need for them to be together, because she left and she left New York. She came back and she took this one opportunity of being back to perform a piece from her heart, and she leaves. She has no expectation that there's anything there. And the inverse of what happened at the beginning happens, where he approaches her now outside after her performance, and she gets exactly what she wants. There was vulnerability with her discussion about love. There's no real vulnerability in your discussion about sex. It's too superficial. And what she's wanting is something much more profound, which is love. And that completely wins me over. Even though I will say in this, I was surprised that, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but the one thing, being a filmmaker now, watching this, 20 years after the fact, that breaks my heart about the ending, is they're in the rain and it's ADR. It's dubbed.
I noticed.
Yeah,
and not very well either.
No, yeah, it's not. It doesn't work. I think if you don't know about it, you're fine. You're so emotionally caught up, but I
don't know how you don't know about it. I mean, maybe the same people that don't recognize the motion setting on their new HD TVs that they buy don't notice, but those people, you got to get your eyes checked.
Yeah. It sucks because it's such a great moment, and it's hard for me to get sucked into that moment because of the ADR. And it's one of those things where it's hard, man. It's raining. Like, I understand the need for, having this dramatic moment take place outside in the rain. There's a sense of cleansing. Rain is very emblematic of a cleansing and a renewal and life affirmation that's taking place with the relationship. And so I understand the need for it, but it's really incredibly difficult to capture good audio with that. And I'm probably the kind of person that if I ADR'd, which stands for automated dialogue replacement, it's also called looping. It's where you'll put the actor back in the booth. They'll hear themselves and they'll try to retime their performance in sync, capturing clean audio with the original recorded audio so that you get the same performance, and which it never works. Like, I'm sure there's really great ADR out there, and it's great because I don't know it's there. But generally, one of the things, just a tip for anybody who has to do this, is Stop doing it where you're putting your actor right back up on the microphone. It's not natural. You don't freaking do that. You don't shoot the scene that way. Don't fucking do your ADR that way. Record the ADR.
Don't go into a vocal booth
at all.
And do it.
Go outside, and get the same
rainy
kind
day.
of mic. Yep. Well, maybe not on the rainy day, but at a minimum, get the same mic. Give them a set of headphones. You can loop the dialogue on a laptop and have that portable. And then take them outside, get the same mic, put it the same distance from them, and now you're getting clean audio that sounds sonically correct to the scene that you recorded it in and under the circumstances. Because whenever you're recording a scene and you're up on the mic like this, it's going to sound fake. It's not going to sound right. And that just drives me nuts. And it's not, this movie isn't the worst offender. I've seen tons of A-list and nominated films that do this crap. And it drives me nuts. I don't know why you do it. I think it's because there's probably, just easier to drop into a sound session and just knock it out. But stop it.
Yeah, but when you're spending millions of dollars, take an extra day. Do it right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I also love the going into the nudity, the sex scene. I love.
You do.
Touche.
Touche.
What I love about it is I don't think people understand that it's not just gratuitous. It cements our connection with their connection, with their romance. It's creating emotional investment and makes us care about them being together. We're buying into their chemistry and into their destiny or their need to be together. Despite whoever else comes into the picture, we'll never see anybody else together the way we're going to see them together. And if you do, that's a whole different kit and caboodle. Like you have a different, ball of spaghetti that you have to untangle. And so it's not just there for, sex sells, which it does. I'm not saying that's a bad marketing tactic. Having R-rated and nudity is another way I've seen a lot of people sell films, even indie filmmakers. Like, if we can get that, that's going to move numbers. Maybe not as much. I don't know how that impacts everything in 2020 as opposed to the 90s and the 2000s and even the early 2010s, whatever you call this decade, the 20 teens. I'm sure it still helps. I'm sure it's still, depending on certain, the situation. But it is also can be very, very useful to create an emotional connection with the audience and with those characters and to get emotional buy-in. Otherwise you might, it's easier to have someone else come between them and say, yeah, I like that guy more. Just taking that, 60 seconds of, sex. And what's funny is shooting that, and I'm sure people have heard this by now, it's not as glamorous as you think. In a number of ways. I remember hearing an interview where Nia Long and Larenz Tate were talking, and Larenz Tate was like, yeah, she was drunk. She was like, I was not drunk, but she had drinks. Like, she had some drinks before she went on set. Because as a woman, like, you're nude on set, even though you're supposed to close the set down, where ideally the only people on set are absolute bare necessity. You have your sound man, you have your camera operator, and hopefully anybody beyond that is absolutely crucial. Maybe a focus puller, and maybe the director. Even the director might step out of the scene and watch from the monitor, depending on the scene and what the choreography is, blah, blah, blah. But on top of that, what I found really hilarious is that Nia Long apparently had a one nipple contract. Like in her contract, there was a clause saying that they could only show one nipple at a time on screen in the edit. And so she's like, it was the most embarrassing thing in the world. Like, she had to sit in a room reviewing footage to make sure they only ever used the footage that had one nipple at a time. And it's hilarious and completely unromantic after the fact, for sure. And probably in the middle of the scene, you're choreographing all these moves. The lighting is in a specific way. The camera movement has to be a specific way. And so it all just gets into this very robotic thing. And I've done kind of romantic scenes before, and I get the gist. Like, I haven't had to do a sex scene, but I've done sexier scenes, and it's unromantic. There's nothing like particularly sexy about it. You're just trying to, do I look good on camera? Do I look silly, or do I look stupid? And hopefully you have people on set that will help you with that. and be honest, because once it's shot. You can't do anything else. So it takes people that that feel comfortable telling you, hey, do this instead of that. You're going to look better on camera. I remember being on set with Bruce Willis on a Robert Rodriguez film, and Bruce kept checking. He was doing an action sequence, and he kept checking like this, and he would kind of keep repeating this moment because he was going to have to do kind of this cartwheel motion and firing his gun at the same time. And he wouldn't be doing the actual cartwheel, but in the edit, he knew this is going to set up the shot of the stunt man doing this, stunt move. And so he kept checking with Robert Rodriguez, saying, like this, does this work? Like this, my movement? And so it takes a lot of trust and it takes a lot of honesty to understand what you're trying to accomplish, and having people there that will give you the feedback that you need so that, we're all on the same team here. Yeah. Anyway, so that's my general overview, I guess. I mean, I really do love this movie. It still works for me. There's movies that I've watched after, 10 years. Now I watch this probably every 1 or 2 years, pretty consistently. And so maybe it's just never had the time to go stale for me. And I love the music. I love that there's jazz and there's Dion Ferris. Hopeless is a great track. This made me fall in love with Duke Ellington all over again. I grew up playing jazz band, and so I knew Duke Ellington, before. It didn't introduce me, but it made me fall in love with it all over again. It's just great
Charlie
soundtrack.
Parker.
Charlie Parker, my God. Such great music. And it frustrates me. I debated reaching out to the writer-director, Theodore Witcher, to get on the podcast. I wasn't sure what your reaction was going to be, and I didn't want to pull him into an explosive situation.
I thought it was well directed.
Yeah, no, it's a well-made film for sure. But the story isn't for everybody, and that's fine. Like, again, this is a 20-some-odd-year-old movie, and things that played as well in the moment back then probably don't play as well today, and that's okay.
I would imagine that he probably has critiques, more critiques of this film 20 years later than you do right now.
That might be true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, my biggest critique of the entire thing was I just did not relate at all in any way, shape, or form with Darius. Not at all. Not from the very beginning, not in the middle, not at the end. It just felt like there were moments where he felt like, man, I do love her, but I don't want to tell, like where he was torn.
Yeah.
But then they passed. They were very fleeting. They didn't cement themselves into the essence of his character, and not from a lack of acting on his part. Like I said, he was a fantastic actor. Is more like he just I just didn't identify with him. I don't know what else to say. It was with him as the character, with his character. It just came way too easy for him, just because he doesn't get her number that first night doesn't mean that it's like he's earned it. I mean, like, literally they go on one date and then he forces his way in. He keeps asking, doesn't force his way in. He just keeps asking and keeps asking. And that's just not me. And so I don't relate to that character. So I don't even care. Like, I personally was not invested in them getting together or staying together at all, because I didn't relate to him as a character. And that's not even necessarily a fault of the writing. Yeah. Because there's probably plenty other people who do relate to that. I mean, maybe you're one of them, and not that you would do that. That's not what I'm saying, but you can relate to that. And I just couldn't find the ability to do that. And so because of that, it just never set up their relationship on any kind of plane for me as a viewer that I was invested in. So when they were apart, I was like, okay, something's going to happen. What's going to happen? And I was more interested in what was going to happen while they were apart than what was happening while they were together. And that's never, I mean, I don't like stories like that, which is why I usually don't like romance films, because I feel like a lot of times they lean on that. They lean on, they're not together, so we're going to throw in another woman, we're going to throw in another man, or they're going to miss each other at the train station or whatever. And I hate that stuff. Like, I want to see the nitty gritty of what happens when you're together. And I guess you do get a little of that. And you bring that up really nicely in that last fight that they have about Lisa, when he's like, I told you this a million times. Well, if you told her that, why do you still have a Post-it note with her number on the wall? Why are you answering calls from her at 5 o'clock in the morning? And not being sympathetic to the fact that she's upset about that. That doesn't make any sense. That's the same Darius at the beginning, from the beginning of the film, to me, who is just like all about sex and about getting the girl and not about love, which is what he like, he talks about at the beginning when he's talking to Savon and and Hollywood and everybody, and he's talking about exhausted the possibility, right? It's like, you can't be woke and say those things and not do them as a character in a film. Like, it just doesn't jive, right? I felt like, and I don't even know his name, but who is their friend with the hat?
Oh, Eddie.
Thank you. I liked Eddie.
Yeah.
Felt like Eddie was calm and chill, man. I identified with Eddie and with obviously with Isaiah, because I'm married and have kids and stuff, right? But he's not perfect and their relationship isn't perfect, but he had a really good point. Like, don't fucking come at me with your advice about how to deal with my relationship when you can't even stay in one for 6 months. Like, yeah, all right. So they learn something. He tries to teach him something. All right, cool. Anyway, but the cinematography was good, and I felt like the directing was good and the acting was good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what else do what else do you need? It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, then on that note, let me think if there was anything else I wanted. Nope. If I did, it's gone.
You seem like you have something else.
No. Well, yeah, I don't think so.
No. Okay.
So, what are you going to recommend this week?
So I wanted to stick with a black theme.
Nice.
And there were so many movies, but the one that came to my head that I just really love and I haven't seen in a while that I want to watch again, and it's maybe you could kind of call it a cop out. I don't know, maybe not, but is I Am Legend.
Oh.
Nice. Because I haven't seen it in so long, and it's so good, and there's not a bunch of white people in it,
right.
and it's not like cluttered and everything. It's just like Will Smith, just trying to survive in a way, and I really enjoy it a lot. There's twists and turns. You don't know what's going to happen, and as with any kind of like apocalypse, end of the world zombie film kind of thing, maybe, or whatever. But yeah, and I just loved Will Smith. I've always loved Will Smith. He hasn't always picked the best movies to do, but whenever he does, whatever he's in, it's enjoyable to say the least.
Yeah. No, always enjoy spending time with him. Yeah. Nice. I'm going to recommend Lovecraft Country. It's a new show on HBO, and so far they've only premiered one episode, and so I watched it, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of an up and down episode. Like, there were really great moments, and then there were kind of drier moments that I was just kind of slipping away. But I think the moments where it's hitting are very promising. Like, I think it's shaping up to be something that is going to be one of these hallmark shows, in the next 2-3 years, where people are like standing around talking about it at the water cooler. And so I don't know where it's going to go from this first episode. If you're listening to this, this is probably now aired, 3 or 4 episodes, but I'm going to go on a limb and say y'all need to watch that show. If you enjoy a mixture of sci-fi and horror, I think it's doing some really cool stuff. If you're familiar at all, even remotely, with H.P. Lovecraft, then you'll kind of have some semblance of idea of where this thing is headed. And so, yeah, go check that out. It's on HBO. And for the short spotlight, I am plugging me, apparently. I took that final poem that Nina says on stage. I took that audio and I kind of made a video around it, where I had this client video that I shot that was about some camera straps, actually. And I shot that and I overshot it so that I could make something else with the footage, because I was having so much fun with my model, Audrey. And she's just so great to shoot. And so I shot some extra footage that I thought came out beautiful. And so I kind of recut the client video into my own little art video, and added some music. And so, yeah, I'll post that. It doesn't really have a title. I guess I Am Remembering is the title of it. And so check that out in the show notes. And stay tuned. Next week, we are going to take on Michael Mann's Miami Vice. Again, that's the Michael Mann version, the movie, not the TV show. I'm sorry. There's zero chance I'm going to sit through the TV show. But you can check out Miami Vice. It's probably streaming. I forgot to look it up. But shout out, this was requested by our buddy on YouTube, Hawaiian Prestige Cars. Like, I don't know if I'm giving a user shout out or a business some like free advertising, but
I love it.
But Pross, man, I hope you're still listening to the show, and I'll make sure I'll tag you in our conversation so that you can come and check out that episode. And don't forget to subscribe, drop us a review on iTunes, and leave us know if there's something you want us to talk about, or if you want to drop in to Love Jones and tell Todd why he got it wrong, why he's the worst, or
go for it.
Or by contrast, why I'm the best. Like you are free to do either one of those and only one of those.
Either or, both at the same time.
Yeah. And you can check that out at thepestlepodcast.com/lovejones. And if you're Theodore Witcher, I'm debating if I'm going to tag him on this, and hope that he doesn't listen. That would embarrass me more than anything. Him coming back and saying, "Dude, you're a moron."
Why? Because
I don't know. He's like
that.
Someone
Why? Because I don't like his film.
Well, no. I think just because I'm analyzing it, and he's gonna. Like say no, you're
see you got dude
imposter syndrome.
You got imposter syndrome, bro.
But what bothers me most about Theodore Witcher is that he never got another opportunity to write and direct. And I'll link to an article about that. Because for 1997 coming out with this, and it's had an enduring appeal. Like the black community, you know, generally I don't know anyone who doesn't love Jones, but this is such a great film, and there's so few amazing black romance films of this caliber.
Agreed.
You know, that it's really upsetting that he never got another film. And I'll link an article that was written, I want to say last year, where they actually discuss that, and he weighs in. But I promise, if I ever had $1 million to throw at a project, he's going to be my very first phone call. Like, hey man, if you got any scripts that you're dying to do, I would freaking love to bankroll you. Not that I'll ever have that kind of money, but we'll see. Maybe one day.
Come on, man. Don't talk yourself out of it.
Fair enough.
You never know.
But yeah, so that's kind of the worst thing that came out of this film is the lack of more work from such an incredible writer director.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
And so if any of y'all want to comment, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/lovejones.
And our quote of the day is from George Bernard Shaw. There are two tragedies in life. One is to lose your heart's desire. The other is to gain it. Why'd you pick that? I
feel like that kind of sums up Darius's issue in a nutshell. Like it's easy to want something, and it sucks to not have it, and then you finally get it, and you no longer really want it. You take it for granted. There was this thing my brother said to me a long time ago, where he said, familiarity breeds contempt. And I chewed on that. I've been chewing on that for the last 20 years. And it's so true. Like, we idolize things that we don't know. And then when we do get to know them, we see all the flaws, the cracks in the paint. And suddenly it's not as beautiful. It's not as attractive. And I think that just happens all the time in a million different ways. You wish for something, and when you get it, you stop appreciating it. And so the things that you end up appreciating the most are often the things you had to work hardest for. And if easy come, easy go. And so, I just love that idea of it's that in a nutshell. Like Darius wanted something, he got it, and he treated it like less than the way he actually valued it. And that came down to a number of things: pride, ego, and just insecurity on it. Of if you're insecure, you can't be vulnerable. And so it's not just, a matter of pride, because I feel like one of my favorite lessons I ever heard was pride is just the lid on the trash can of insecurity. Like, underneath all that pride is the fear, the anxiety of being vulnerable and of being laid bare. And underneath that, of course, is the insecurity that you're going to find out you're not good enough, that you're not lovable. And I feel like that's buried deep in, and I don't think this film touches on that. But if I were to psychoanalyze Darius, I would say that's ultimately where his issue is stemming from. And maybe it was. Maybe he had to write his book before he finally felt, the ability to be vulnerable. Because I feel like that was his vulnerability, was writing his book for her. Like that's vulnerable territory. Like you just, that's all in ink. You're not taking any of that back. Yeah. But I love that concept.
I think what I see in this, because I don't want to just be disagreeable on everything. No. Some days I feel like my wife thinks that I just like want to fight, and
I don't think so. I've never felt that way with you, but
well, we haven't disagreed this much yet, Wes. The thing that this does make me think of, that I really try to remind myself of, and I remind my wife of this all the time, because it's something like what she's doing now, going back to get her MFA from NYU. It's the journey, not the destination, right? So if you're going through something with the idea that you're going to be happy when you get there, you're doing it all wrong. You hear about these monks in Tibet who spend like years making these like little sand art designs, and then they will just, the moment they're done, they just destroy the whole thing, because it has nothing to do with finishing. It's about the making of it. And I think that as long as you keep that in mind, you're okay, right? With anything, whether that's creating something or whether that's a relationship or whatever. You're not, in my relationship, my goal is not to die with her. My goal is to be happy with my partner throughout, right? And to remind myself of that. So that's what I see in this. The whole, it's hard for me to embrace the idea of familiarity breeds contempt, because then that taints everything in my mind. It's not that it's not true in a lot of ways. It is. But I just try to keep that out of my mind, because there's going to be so many things that you do work for and then you do get. And then if that's part of your psyche, then it starts Swiss cheesing everything that you get, right?
You feel like you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Yes, totally. So while that is true, I try to, and I think that I think that is true in a lot of cases where you're not actually getting what it is that you really want, right? Because if you were really getting what you really wanted, there would be no holes. There would be no like contempt. There would be peace, right? So I think you just have to really analyze what it is what your goal really is, or what your want really is. Because then if you get that, then that gives you peace, right? So I don't know. I'm not trying to be too heady or anything. I'm just like, just trying to like reconcile this. And I in doing that, I think I this makes a lot more sense, because otherwise, like it's hard for me to do anything if I'm not enjoying doing it. If I don't enjoy doing it, the process of it, the making of it, the hours of it, the labor, so the anguish sometimes, then what's the point in doing it? It's just like hard. It's already hard. It's already hard to get up early in the morning and do something. If you hate doing the thing that you're waking up early to do, it's like hard, makes it even harder. But if you like doing it, it makes it easy. All the other bullshit you have to go through easier. Anyway, whatever. Good quote, man. Yeah, good quote. Thank you guys for joining us so much. Like Wes said, make sure to like and subscribe and on the channel, and to leave a comment, to leave a review. All of that helps us so much. It really, really does. And thank you to everybody who's reviewed. And looking forward to next week. We'll be doing Miami Vice. Until then, I am Todd.
I am Wes.
Go watch the movies.